Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me for number 33, Where I'm From with Jeannine, who is the author of this wonderful memoir, The Part That Burns. I read it with my book club. We had a great discussion about it. I'm very excited to have Jeannine join me because she's wonderful, but also because there she is.
Hi there. I can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I told you I've never done this before. I
Yes.
didn't know how to do it. So I found my way.
I'm a lot of people's first Instagram live.
Yeah,
So
okay. I see already that maybe I should have considered headphones, but I didn't. So here I am.
I can hear you. You're fine. I just wear headphones because not really currently, but there is background noise from time to time in this space. So I try to just keep it,
Okay, makes
you know.
sense. Live and learn. This has been a really nice tutorial for me.
That's what I'm here for. I was just holding up your book and saying that I read it and loved it, and we read it for our book club. Ronit is here. She was one of the people that was in the book club, and we talked about it. We had a great discussion.
Oh, that's so amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that you had in your book club. And sorry, speaking of background noise,
Hi, dog. That's
but
some of my background noise as well.
yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
have a partner around here somewhere who's going to provide some backup for that. So,
Yep, yep. And I was going to say that this is very special for me because I first became aware of these prompts through you.
hmm
You shared them, and and I didn't finish my poem. We were paired off together, and I was with Amy, who's a writer friend who knows some of these same writers, Amy Rogers. And we just ended up talking. We talked a lot about her poem. And then I so enjoyed hearing everyone's poems. And
uh,
that was part of my experience was how much I enjoyed that. And because I'm more of a grown up than I used to be, I was able to just say, wow, I really enjoyed hearing everyone's poems instead of, why didn't I finish my poem? Why didn't I do a better job? I just was like, I really like listening to people. Maybe I could do that more often. I love doing it. And so now I have. So thank you.
well, first, you're so welcome. Yeah, and second, I also have until now, I've never done this prompt. I've never completed it. And so I've known about it for a long time because it was actually introduced to me by a writer who was a part of a workshop that I was teaching. And
Mm-hmm.
so she mentioned it, and I said, that sounds really cool. I'd love to see that. And she followed up and sent it after the
Mm-hmm.
workshop. And so it's been in my awareness for like 4 years or so.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we started doing the forums through the University of Minnesota, this is the project for advancing healthcare stewardship forums. Um, it just kind of perked right back up into my consciousness. I thought, I wonder about that. It goes so deep, so quickly into identity.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, and I was frankly really blown away by the range of things and the like consistent
Mm-hmm.
quality and emotiveness and
Mm-hmm.
specificity of what people write from this prompt. So
Mm-hmm. Me too. And I felt when I heard them like, wow, this is incredible. These people are incredible. And then I sat with it a while and thought maybe we're all incredible,
yeah,
you know.
yeah, I think that's like we're all incredible.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and because I'm a writer and you're a writer, like I can't help though, but and then because those forums use the principles of narrative medicine,
Mm-hmm.
it also is a testament to how with just a little bit of nudging toward concrete specific detail,
Mm-hmm.
like just take that one thing, which this prompt is really good at, almost like effortlessly
Mm-hmm.
eliciting from people.
Yes.
um it's such a testament to where that can take us and how that can lead us to places that we wouldn't otherwise have gone, but also um how I guess for me it's this lived experience, of how the universality really, really does live in the specific,
Hmm.
and when you just hear that coming out again and again, and yeah,
That has
so
been the big
far,
takeaway for me, for
yeah,
sure. I've said it here so many times, like how I relate to these specifics, even though they're not my specifics. And it's just, it's really, it's been a really powerful experience for me to witness all of these poems and to talk to these people and have these connections. It's just, it's funny how these little seeds can get planted and grow in ways that we can't anticipate. So this has been like living that lesson on a weekly basis. So it's
well,
been a
it's a
gift.
very cool project that you've created, from that one-time experience. Like it's just so inspiring, you know? Yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
so inspiring what you've done. So,
And I didn't know that you hadn't completed a poem, but then when you said, "Oh, it's not going to be ready," I thought, "Oh, she hasn't done it yet." That's so funny. She's like me.
yeah, yeah, I teach and, like I'm teaching a workshop this weekend and I'm teaching it's a body-based writing workshop and I'm teaching it with my daughter who just finished yoga teacher training several like in the winter, has been practicing for about a decade and they were asking me, well, like, do you write when you're, to the prompt when you're teaching? And the truth is that I don't usually. I rarely do. I sometimes will jot down a couple of lines, like obviously if something comes to me, I'm not
Right.
gonna push it away.
Right.
Um, but when I'm teaching, I'm really, my energy is directed toward it's a really outward energy. It's to sort of creating and maintaining that safe, creative space for everyone else. And so for me, and this doesn't have to be universal to everyone else, but for me, it's best
Mm-hmm.
to stay in that space. And when I'm writing, if I'm going to go all the way like under that exterior surface, like where I'm really, really focused on the dynamics of everyone else and what how like in narrative medicine it's not just what's said but also what's not said, and sort of like
Yeah.
really holding that, then I just need to remain really, really present in that. And whereas writing is an inherently vulnerable act, and
Yeah.
so it requires us to be willing to fall apart, I think. um
It does for me.
yeah,
I mean, especially
that's
when writing memoir. I think because you
especially,
don't
yeah,
know what you're going to uncover. You could start a prompt and it can take you somewhere very surprising very quickly. And I think that is part of the reason I didn't do the poem in the workshop. Like I just wasn't in the space,
yeah,
so it was easier for
yeah,
me to just talk and support others. And
yeah,
that's my go-to anyway. So I have to,
yeah, yeah,
I have to step out of that space in
right,
order to write.
yes, like I get that, like yes. And so, like, I think over the years, right, you develop an ability to recognize, and there is a switch that you can say,
Yeah.
okay, now it's my turn, and I do get to go
Mm-hmm.
deep, right? But I don't want to um, I don't want to dissolve my sort of ability to be present, my like ego strength as a, facilitator, like
Mm-hmm.
in the middle of something. Anyway, so yeah, so I've never done the prompt. And so it was really interesting to work with it, especially after, having recently published a
Mm-hmm.
memoir, and I wanted to not just retread all the
Mm-hmm.
familiar ground. I didn't want to do that. And I also made a decision that I did want to stick pretty close to the structure
Yeah.
that Georgella Lyon provided. And
Mm-hmm.
I knew I could give myself permission, like to go off map or take
Mm-hmm.
it where it led. But when I teach writing prompts, I always recommend that people first like give it a try.
Mm-hmm.
Let that constraint do its work on you, and then from there, like whatever, anything goes. Or toss it off. If you're called to toss it off, but like it might be interesting. I think always there's something to be gained probably from staying in the container. So that's what I did for my
I
for
agree. But I love containers, so it's like not a, I mean, I think now I've been through, like when I was younger, I can see younger people chafing against it a bit more because it was like I just chafed more against everything than I
Yeah,
do now. You
yeah.
know, where now it's like, oh, cool. Because I sort of, because I write in a lot of different forms. So I appreciate, I enjoy it. Like
Mhm.
I find containers to be useful for doing exactly that, for containing, for giving me direction.
Yeah.
Um, so,
What,
well, I'm excited to hear it. I've already read it, obviously. We can discuss a little more after, but if you'd like to read it, I'd love
yeah.
to hear it.
Let me pull it up. I'm doing this like incredible balancing act. If you could
Uh-huh.
see, I also
Have
didn't
you
know. I didn't know
have you
you could
jerry
hear your
rigged something?
phone. I didn't know any. I didn't know. Like I feel like such a. I'm really revealing all of my secrets of incompetence. Like I've never done Instagram. I didn't know on your phone. So
You
like,
do.
yeah, now I know that. So just
Yeah,
you know,
because I've
everybody.
had people try to join other ways. I think there is a hack, but it's complicated. So then
Oh,
you just can see me and I'm like inviting you and you can't join. So
oh,
it's
yeah. I will
very frustrating.
figure out the hack. So we'll
Okay.
just have to deal with my shaky, like bizarre
It's all
setup.
right.
Okay. Um, okay. So I titled it "Fine Woven." Like like whatever. I'll say one thing. Everything is a placeholder. Okay. Yeah. Fine woven. I am from overflowing ashtrays, from store brand cereal and late payments. I am from steep wooden front steps, rickety, paint flaking, slats of sunlight blooming the chickweed. I am from the ancient volcanic rock, the clear rolling creeks tumbling together into Lake Superior, whose freezing waters and ocean-sized waves pulse through my veins like blood. I'm from Democrats and railroad foremen, from Georgianne and Alice and Adele. I'm from chain smoking and late nights with Johnny Carson, from go out and play and get out of my sight. I'm from excommunicated from the Catholic Church for divorce and racing for donuts after the Lutheran service. I'm from Duluth and Lambton, Lowry's baked chicken and apple walnut salad. I'm from my father's father, who dropped dead after a short lifetime of spreading inch-thick butter on crackers, and my mother's mother, who caught cancer from all those dry cleaning chemicals. But high on my closet shelf, behind my cardigans and cotton dresses, are stacks of fancy vintage hats that belonged to my father's mother, Adele, the only grandparent who lived to meet me, and her sister, Alice, who loved me so. The hats they wore to the glass block in Duluth and to the Field Museum in Chicago during the World Fair. I am from those hats, bejeweled with feathers and sequins and nets, from the fine woven hope for what might someday bloom next to so much chickweed and ash.
Beautiful.
Oh, thank you, Allison.
Yeah. I love these poems too because they do often have such a strong sense of place, which is something sometimes we long for in our writing but can't achieve. And I think these do that almost uniformly. And I do really feel that. I did feel that in your book too, especially with Lake Superior, that connection to the water and the nature, and I that resonates strongly with me. That's how I feel about the Pacific Ocean. So I and the World's Fair is like so. That's just such an iconic thing of the Midwest. Like, and to think that you had someone there wearing hats that you now possess. It's kind of magical that you have them still.
I
Um,
have I have a photograph,
oh,
and that didn't make it into the poem like on revision. I was just trying to keep this rhythm, but
mm-hmm.
it's a photograph of them on the stairs. So it's my paternal grandmother and her sister um, on the stairs of the Field Museum, and they were at that that World Fair, and it's just so wild to think about it, And these were
Mm-hmm.
working class
Mm-hmm.
families, yeah, but like proud. working class
Mm-hmm.
family. I
Oh, for
would
sure.
describe my paternal side. So, you know, with
And
the,
for
yeah,
anyone who's ever been to the Field Museum, it does have that sort of, I mean, that old quality. It feels like, oh, this has been here long. It's substantial. I remember going there in college and thinking, what is this place? Like
yeah,
it's otherworldly. So for
yeah.
me, like just talking about it brings back my own feelings of it, my own experiences.
And I might or might not be correct about this, but I think this is right, that it was built for the World's Fair.
I
Like,
think so.
yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So like, and that's so just think about that. You know, like what a big deal that was.
Mm-hmm.
That a building like that, which is so iconic and feels so, I mean, it's because of the architecture that makes it feel ancient. It was
Yes.
1839, I guess, was
Yeah.
that World Fair, but yeah.
Well, and the sort of, I don't know, the self seriousness of Chicago, like, okay, we're a real big city now and we're building this, it
Yeah.
feels that sort of way, you know.
Yeah.
Um, so, and I can see being seduced by it and be, bewitched by it as a new American. Like, yes,
Yeah.
we're substantial, we're serious.
Right.
Um, it has that feeling about it. So it's just I just love it that they were there. I wouldn't be surprised if I had relatives there, but I don't know that because my maternal side's from Wisconsin. So
Yeah.
they might have been there. But I always I feel so grateful for those pieces that we harvest from our past, particularly our further back past. So whenever people share those with me about their families, I feel like it's a gift.
Well, it's also a gift to be asked to share.
No.
you know, I mean, it is. It's such a, like being a
Mm-hmm.
receiver for someone's story is such an important role. Actually, like bringing us full circle to you talking about not having finished your poem in the forum but taking everyone else's in, like sometimes that's, um, I mean, it's always just as important as giving, but sometimes it's the more important role. So,
Mm-hmm. Thank you. That's really can tear up. Because I think, like I said at the beginning, I'm more self-accepting than I used to be, and so I have space where I can say, "Oh, this does have value." But I think we live in a very, I mean, you can use all kinds of very big words for the society we live in, but creating or doing is
mm,
for the most part valued more than witnessing or supporting. And I've applied that same bias to myself most of my life. That if I'm not doing for others, who am I?
yeah.
But witnessing them is doing for others and myself. But it's taken me a while to get there.
Usually, it's kind of like, isn't that the same kind of oh, self-talk that we like as introverts, you know, endure like
Mm.
throughout our lives because our particularly American culture does not value introversion. Like it's so uncool.
No, I don't even know if I am. Like it's one of those things I've always considered myself an extrovert because I am certainly performing that. And it was only over COVID that I thought, oh, maybe I'm not. Because I wasn't doing it. I wasn't habitually doing the things that I get praised for. So it
Yeah,
gave me time to consider, are those things I want to do? Or are those things I
yeah.
just do? So,
That's funny because it's like about 10 or 15 years ago, there was this study, and I'm sure it wasn't the first of its kind. It just so happened that it was the first of its kind that I came across in that particular moment. And it was one of those studies that essentially shows that extroverts are happier, you know.
right.
Um,
Yeah.
I think that's pretty solid research. I don't argue with it. And so when I was reading it at that particular time, it did strike me, and I thought, oh, so like, yeah, there's parts of this that make sense, and I could do I could try, like, it was like I could try a little harder. You know what I mean? And it was like at a time in my life where that wasn't always true. Like for me, I couldn't always try a little harder, like, but I think it was like at this moment in time where I recognized, oh yeah, like I could, take up a little bit more effort in this arena, and it might actually enrich my life to,
Mm,
I'm not going to become like my internal set point is introverted, but I could do more outgoing things and it might feel good. And that was pretty revolutionary like shift in my thinking. And I don't think it was an accident that it came after 10 years of teaching. I'd been teaching
mhm.
for 10 years at that point in an elementary school, but still like you're dealing with people and parents and
Oh, for
families and
sure.
colleagues every day. And
Oh, yeah.
uh, so I think I gained a skill set that I realized, oh,
Hmm.
actually, like I can do this. I
Hmm.
could do it in my personal life too, if I chose to, and it might benefit me. Yeah, but that's funny that you say like I could totally see how that could happen to someone because, and that's the same reason in part why extroverts are happier because the culture rewards those
Definitely.
activities, which
Yes.
and rewards. Who doesn't want rewards? I do.
Well, that's what I was thinking when you said that about extroverts being happier. I do think it's actually it's intertwined with that because of the way our society's built.
Yeah.
They're getting a lot of positive feedback for what they're doing, and they're not being asked repeatedly, "What's going on with you? Are you okay? Why aren't you more?" Or just ignored wholesale. So
Right.
like,
Like, oh wait, were you there?
oh my God, I missed you. I didn't
Right.
even see you, oh, thanks. So I need to make sure I'm seen, to be of value. So it's complicated. I think especially once you become a parent, or at least me, when I became a parent, I started thinking about things that I just sort of accepted as truth and started questioning a lot more of those things because I didn't want to just force those truths onto my children. Um,
Mm.
so it's like, oh, you maybe are just naturally like this. How do I learn how to support this in the world instead of trying to turn this into something else? Which I think we were parented a lot more like that, um,
Hmm.
you know, um, or whether we were parented that way or not, I certainly internalized those lessons. Like, here is how I get through the world with the least amount of chafing. Going back to chafing, here's how I get through the world that feels the least painful for me.
Yep. I think that totally makes sense. And I think that those messages, and I think they were in the education system more
For
hard
sure.
baked back then too. Um, and I think it wasn't well intended. Like so much is like okay, everybody meant well, but it there was some collateral damage there.
For sure. There's more than one kind of person. I agree, Lena. It is one of the hardest, and it is one of the hardest parts of parenting, but it is also one of the most rewarding parts of parenting. On the flip side, as I see my
Mhm.
children grow into these people and feel that I'm supporting them, it's very rewarding when their fierce selves go out into the world and are who they
Yeah,
are.
I love that. That's so beautiful. Their fierce selves.
And they are.
Mm.
They are. And it's a privilege. I have spoken about this many times in regards to these poems, but um, I never really felt like a child. Like that wasn't something, and I could see that you might have felt similarly having read your memoir,
Mhm.
um, and that having children, like, oh, this is what it's like to be 6 years old.
Yeah.
You
Oh,
know,
tell me about it. Yeah. And I have to say, Allison, and I have a pretty, like a pretty intense background. So this is,
yes, you
this
do.
this part maybe unique to me. Although I think people do talk about this with grandparenting, but we have four grandchildren now. My husband's kids all have kids, and we've been married 22 years, and so the grandkids they range from 4.5 about to almost 2. And it's wild to sort of do it again in a way,
I'm
and
sure.
see that. And like, so I thought everything you're saying the first time is like, oh, this is what it's like to be 4, to be 5, to be 2, to be 7. And now I look at these little people, we have them every Friday. We do a day of babysitting, and it's like, wow, like the the visceral certitude in how fleeting it is, first of all, which cannot unfortunately be communicated. Like there's no, you have to live it to know it. Like it doesn't matter how many times people tell you when you're a parent, it goes fast and but like
Mhm.
it's so that part. And then just you said to what it feels like to be a child. And like, yeah, I definitely didn't feel like a kid when I was a kid. And I feel like I feel more like a kid now. And I definitely have a much more like I'm have the capacity to be so playful with our grandchildren and can use play as a you know as a tool for like getting from point A to point B, just with so much ease. And it's just, and I think, oh, and sometimes I look back on like I was so serious as a young mother, and it was
Well,
just
you
like
were a young mother. I
I
mean,
was so young.
you truly were young. And so,
And I wanted, and I was so determined. I mean, I was
yeah,
young, and then like,
yeah,
grinding my own wheat, and
yeah.
like I was so determined. I mean, like literally grinding my own wheat. Nothing was going to harm these babies, and
Right.
that's exhausting, you know.
Yes, it
Like
is.
everything had to be quote perfect, which is
Right.
absolutely impossible. And so you've
Right.
failed before you've begun, and that's
Mhm.
heavy to carry that load around.
Mhm.
And I can't go back and be less serious, or I can't do that. We don't. Yeah, that is what it is, and
Mhm.
hopefully a few good things came out of like very serious determination, but also it's really joyful to, and of course grandparents don't have the same responsibility, so
Right.
that's a very light, you
Mhm.
know
Mhm.
that's a very light position to hold. You're just support staff.
Mhm.
um, but
Yeah.
it's lovely like to think that over the course of a human lifetime you actually like can have, it's a different version of the experience, but it is still a very childlike experience to reclaim, you know,
Yeah.
that it is reclaimable. Yeah, I think that's a beautiful thing.
I agree. And I've always loved children and knew I wanted to have children and but nothing could prepare me for what the experience is actually like. Not
Yeah,
only the quicksilver nature of it, but just all of it, I mean, it's just, and I know it's not for everyone. This is not a speech about you must have children, but for
no,
me, it
no.
was, and I'm so grateful for people who don't want children, who don't have them, like
Mhm.
who don't get convinced that it's for them when it's not. Like, I wish more people would say it's not for me and stick with it.
Yeah,
Um, but for me, it has been profound being a
yeah,
parent. Um, so it's, so I think too, yeah, for me, I think these like for so many reasons, listening and witnessing these poems is meaningful for me, but it is also because childhood, it was not a childhood. And I don't think it was for very many people. And so I think for me, every time I step out of feeling like I'm terminally unique, it's very healing, I'm not. We're all sharing these experiences even in ways that we can't quite fathom, but though that feeling of community in that space is it's powerful. It is always very powerful for me to feel like, yes, what I experienced, the specificity of it, yes, it was unique, but the not childhood is
hmm,
not.
yeah,
you know
for sure.
we're legion. There's a lot of us. So um and I think for so many of us, revisiting our childhood through loving younger people, and healing those things, and then remembering. I think the more I am able to sort of heal things, the more I can remember the joys and the transcendent sort of pieces of that time, because they were there too.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's super important. My daughter, the one I'm teaching with this coming
Is
weekend,
she the
just
one you wrote with too? Just out of curiosity, is she the one from the
yes,
essay? Okay.
yes. So they go by Billy.
Okay.
And that's the daughter who co-wrote Bent, and just completed a poetry manuscript that they're calling Happy Boring. And the title, I feel like I shouldn't really be talking about their work, which they haven't really had a chance to talk about themselves yet, but whatever. Like, I was a part of it. So, but it
You're
comes
proud. You're a proud parent. You're being a
Well,
proud parent.
yeah, definitely I'm a proud parent, but it's also like a bit of a statement on what writing does, because, they were working on this manuscript. They called it Happy Boring, and it's a it's an oblique reference to like, as a writer, and I'm like, you got to clarify this. As a writer, I say, because it's true, like in plot, we're talking about plot. This is craft, okay? Happy is boring. Like, you need some conflict. And this is like straight out of Janet Burroway's writing fiction textbook. Like, don't take me on a picnic where the sun shines and the butterflies flutter and the creek burbles and the food, is perfectly delicious. Like, okay, where's the story, right? Um, so being raised by a writer, they have certainly, been exposed to that. But when it comes to life, that's the thing. We want to be happy, right? We want happiness, and we also are well served to do exactly what you said. You said it really well, which is to give our attention as much as possible to the moments of transcendence, even in the darkest times. And sometimes we can only do that with hindsight, but to find the drop of light, to find that, that moment of respite, or the person who helped, or, the hilarity that emerged through the hysteria, which is a thing that I have that kind of like hysterical laughter response to things sometimes. And, the
Yes,
truth
me
is,
too.
it can be really fun. It can feel really good, briefly, when something's apart.
Yeah. I mean, it's a coping tool for sure. I mean,
Totally.
sometimes you got to laugh or cry, and I definitely have chosen laughter more than once
Yeah.
because I just didn't want to fall apart again.
And that's a part of the truth, right? Like,
Yeah.
all that is a part of that bigger truth. And so, yeah, so we have to be able to bring and keep our attention on those moments, or we just, yeah, otherwise it's all just it's not just that it's too heavy to bear and it's a
Yeah.
box of darkness. It's also not true. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And like when you're in community with people, I mean, it's easier to share laughter, and and I didn't want to be alone with it. So if you can make it you can talk about it, experience whatever, share it in a way that is palatable to people. Sometimes I needed to do that. You
mm-hmm.
know, you can't just like, I couldn't. You can't. Anyone can, but I couldn't. I didn't want to be that always. I didn't always want to be the broken toy. Sometimes I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to be fun. So we contain multitudes. We all do. Um,
Well, I think that that's one of the reasons I love constraints and
yeah.
prompts, and this one doesn't to my mind isn't necessarily one that engenders this particular quality, but some constraints, certainly one quality of constraints can be their ability to just like produce a certain sort of like, there's humor. That's all I'm saying. Like, they can juxtapose things in certain ways that create strangeness, and
Mm-hmm.
the opportunity for humor that's really healing, you
Mm-hmm.
know. Um,
I have to
yeah,
ask you for some of those offline because I'm always looking for that sort of, I mean, that in my own writing, you know,
yeah.
I take that really to heart because there always has been humor for me, even right after the darkest times, right adjacent to
Mhm.
them, and even when you're living them, for oftentimes like the surreality of it. It's
Yeah,
not exactly funny, but it is like strange, like you said.
strange. Well, and so I can try to do that offline. And I've written
Yes,
about
please.
constraints are a area of mine that, you know, like a subspecialty or whatever. And I teach using them
Yeah.
extensively, and especially in person. And in person is where you really get, like Allison, in in-person things with certain constraints, inevitably every single time, like we will be laughing until tears, like my sides hurt, my face
Hmm.
hurts, you know, because
Hmm.
things just happen that are just nutty.
Yes.
And it's the constraint. So it's like John Cleese's open mode, in his theories of creativity, you know, so we're in open mode and these wild and incredible things come out and they're very funny. Um, but, um, but sometimes it's not even just like that. Like the constraint itself may not be geared toward humor, but uh, like one example that I always think of because it was just so unnerving and unexpected is when I was working on the chapter of my book called Tumbleweeds. I had given myself a constraint, and the constraint, you know, it was just simple. It was like, okay, you have to use, like, I gave myself things that I had to use. And so it was like I had to use the botany of tumbleweeds because that was a big part of it. I had to use like the breeding habits of the western meadowlark, and I had to use the geography. I can't remember. I'm getting some things mixed up because I use these a lot. But anyway, I gave myself these constraints. And one of them, or I gave myself a constraint, which was that I
Hmm.
had to use these different things. And one of
Hmm.
them was the jackalope. And so,
And I love that because it's such a specific sort of Mountain West, I guess
yeah,
Midwest too,
it's
but
right. Super, super specific.
yeah.
And it's true in that like there were this whole jackalope, and there is a jackalope in downtown Douglas. And I
Mhm.
visited it a couple of years ago when my stepson got married in Jackson Hole. I was like, I got to go see that jackalope. I posed with it. I have a picture of myself posing with the jackalope because, like, I'm gonna own this jackalope, you
I
know.
have one where I'm riding the jackalope in Wall,
Ah,
South Dakota. There's like the enormous. Have you ever seen the picture of? I
I've been
I
to
got on
Wall.
it. Yeah, there's a big jackalope there.
Okay,
It's
I'll have to look it up.
yeah, yeah. You can ride it.
So this is like weird mythology, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
weird. And so when I started putting that chapter together, and you know, like I feel like I know when I'm onto something, and that
Hmm.
piece, prior to the publication of my book, like it was a finalist in several different contests and ended up, you know, placing in one. And I knew it was good. I was like,
Hmm.
I've got something here. Like, so there's something here that's really working. And as I was putting these things next to each other and developing the different threads and stuff, I was so excited. And it was actually my daughter, my older daughter, who also writes, who was the one who said to me, because she was reading, she was my reader, and she said, it didn't used to start with the jackalope. It started with like my house in Douglas, blah, blah.
Hmm.
And she was like, Mom, I think, what if you started here? And I was like, oh my God, of course, that's the beginning. And, and anyway, and that was so fun. I remember like driving down the street, thinking about it and puzzling it, and couldn't wait to get home to like fix that. And I said to my husband, in the midst of that particular time, I said, you know, it's kind of weird. Like I feel really happy and excited, and that doesn't feel like how I should feel writing about my stepfather's incest.
Hmm.
And so to me, like that's a testament to, you know, the way that constraints can bring levity
Hmm.
and light and even humor, because I do think that jackalope is like funny in a really weird way,
Hmm.
um, into where you wouldn't expect it,
Hmm.
you know?
And I think also, at least for me, I would imagine if I were feeling joy in that moment, it's partially the joy of finding a way into the material that feels like it's satisfying in the right way. There's joy for me always in that.
Yeah.
I got there. It's a huge relief,
Yeah.
especially
Like,
material like that.
right. Like I broke through that concrete wall, you know?
Yes. Yeah, because it's not like you're going to tell it chronologically. I mean, that's not how those stories get told. So you got to
No,
find a way in.
no, it's like that's the whole point, right? Like it's not
Hmm.
like you can sit down and say, once upon a time, this is what happened, you
No.
know? It's like yeah, it had to be like, how do I get there?
Hmm.
Yeah. So definitely part of that was the joy, but it was like definitely that combined with the oddity, the strangeness of
Hmm.
these different things playing off each other and seeing the metaphors, you know, just do their own work, like with me doing nothing, and just like, and seeing that start to happen, and feeling, yeah, like things were just falling down like manna out of the
Hmm.
sky for me.
That is
And
a
that's
great feeling.
such a beautiful feeling, because because
Yeah.
like we know, right? It's often just so hard.
Hmm.
It's hard. It's
But
hard
it
work.
gets you somewhere. And I think that's also the importance of prompts and all the, like, I've gotten much better at not feeling so precious about everything I write. It all takes you somewhere. Where I used to feel like, oh, I wrote this. Where's it going to go? What's it going to be? Now it's just, I don't know. Sometimes I just don't know. And that's okay.
100%. Yeah, that's what I believe. I believe that everything is just clay. It's all just material.
Right.
And maybe we'll be able to use a piece of it for the thing we're working on, or maybe most of it is going to sit in the clay pile.
Mhm.
But like none of it is waste.
Yeah. I think it's so important to get your mind there.
Yeah, but
For me, it's a game changer when
it's
realize nothing is waste. Nothing in your life is really
yeah,
waste.
nothing is waste. And it's a game changer when you realize that just because you wrote something and it came out in this order and you worked on it for a little while and there's like 800 words or whatever, that it has to remain some iteration of itself. Like, you know
Hmm.
what I mean? Like somehow I have to use this material in its current, something that resembles its current form. It's like, that's so limiting,
Hmm.
for
Hmm.
us as writers versus like, okay, I made this thing. Is there anything in it that could become something,
Hmm.
which might like not resemble anything even close to what its original DNA.
Hmm.
And I think like that's how we get to zero waste.
Yeah. That seems like a good place to wrap up because that's advice that I wish I could have integrated into me earlier, but
Mhm.
I wasn't ready. So that's something that if that's your one takeaway, anyone, nothing is waste.
Yeah.
We'll all be happier if we can accept that.
Right.
Yeah. So, well, this has been such a joy for me. So, thank you so much for coming and sharing your poem and all of your wisdom. It's been really special. So,
Well, thank
thank you.
you. Yeah, thank you for all the work you're doing in the world with this. And
Oh,
thank you for having me. And, for continuing to, participate in pause and just all of it. Yeah, thank you for your work in the world, Allison. It's a pleasure.
oh, thank you. Have a lovely day. I'll see
You
you soon
too.
on Zoom. Okay.
Okay, yeah, bye bye.
Bye.